Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, and here I am in Maida Vale, London. And behind me you can see the house where Alan Turing was born. You can probably see the blue plaque there. He was born in 1912 and into an upper middle class family. He had a couple of siblings. I don't propose to say too much about him, as I made a video about him before outside his house in Ham. Is it Ham? We're near Hampton Court, really. Anyway, so he was brought up in the Church of England. He was Irish on his father's side. I think his mother was English, and he went to Sherborne School. And for some reason, the transport system broke down. There was a rail strike or something like that. And he was so keen to start on time, he cycled many, many miles to get there. He's one of the school's only famous old boys. It's a school in Devon, the southwest corner of England. So he distinguished himself academically, and then he went up to Cambridge University. So maths was really his subject, but he was a very odd character. He seemed to have had Asperger's syndrome. So he published a famous tract on computable numbers, and I wouldn't understand head nor tail of it. Anyway, so he was recruited by Bletchley Park at the outbreak of the Second World War. Bletchley Park was the United Kingdom's code-breaking institution, and that's where it was housed, in a building called Bletchley Park. It's some way north of London. It's in Bedfordshire, if I got that right. It's open to the public, obviously not during coronavirus. So there were other these mathematical freaks a bit like him who were there, and he was very worried about the financial consequences of the Second World War. So he turned all his savings into silver ingots and buried them in the grounds of Bletchley Park. So by his mathematical wizardry, they were able to crack the code, the Enigma code, and they could read all the German messages. So they knew how their cipher worked. I couldn't understand how they did it. It's completely Hebrew to me. And obviously these messages were often in German, and they had some linguists who were absolutely perfect in German to help them. So you should see the film about it called Bletchley Park, where he's shown as the real oddball that he really was. Anyway, after the Second World War, he was living in Manchester, where he was the victim of a theft, and he reported this to the police. And there he was, age 42. He had a young man in his 20s come into his house. And why did he have this young man come into his house? He let him in, invited him in, and whilst reporting the crime to the police, he acknowledged to the police that he'd brought this young man there with a view to a homosexual encounter. So he was then arrested and charged with gross indecency. Now, some days after that, he bit into an apple which had been injected with cyanide and died. This was deliberate, presumably committing suicide. So he was 42. So for decades he was an unsung hero, but in more recent years he's been adulated. And did he have a conviction for gross indecency? I'm not sure. But the convictions of all these men who were convicted prior to 1967 of homosexual acts, all those convictions were overturned in 1967 by some sort of act of parliament to say their wife don't count. Obviously it was posthumous in his case. So that is Alan Turing. Toodaloo.